Welcome, everyone. You are here to join us on a presentation put on by Home SF. We're going to be discussing the renting versus buying today. We welcome you all on this beautiful evening here in San Francisco. My name is Nick Tulchinsky. I'm with Balance. We're a nonprofit housing counseling agency in San Francisco. We're also going to be joined today with Amy Biggie with BMO, Bank of Montreal. And we're excited to be here, and we're happy you could join us as well.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. This is Emma from BMO. Thank you for welcome to our workshop. Today you have two specialists. Let's get together, discuss a rent versus own. Thank you.
Great. We also have Alex helping us out from Home SF. If you have any technical issues, also Shannon is here, maybe we'll be helping out. Please post your concerns or questions to chat. We will get to your questions today as well, so please post them there. All right, so this workshop is being recorded by Home SF. We're going to remain on mute until the question and answer period. And we do encourage you to ask questions under chat, and we will get to them. Any technical issues, if you're not able to post them under chat, there's the email address, and we'll have Alex or Shannon help us monitor any of those emails that may come through. So that email is info@homeownerships.sf.org. All right, and to enable closed captioning, for those of you that are interested in doing that, we have this slide to show you how to do that for a computer there. You can click on Show Caption, and then choose the language that you prefer, and now you get set you up for the computer. If you have a tablet or cell phone, you want to click on the CC where it says there with captions, and then click on the button that says Show Captions again, and select your language. Okay, so those are your steps. If you want to take a quick screenshot of this before we move on to the next slide, please do that. But here are the instructions for options: computer, cell phone, and or tablet. So who is Home SF? So Home SF is a nonprofit organization in San Francisco that basically works as a liaison, kind of the umbrella for all 5 agencies that you see listed here in San Francisco. I myself am a counselor with Balance. There's 4 other agencies that you see here with Asian Inc., Meta, SF LGBT Center, and SF HDC. We all offer some similar services and also some different services. So these are the agencies' names you may hear. We all are involved in housing, whether it's rental or ownership. We put on workshops, we offer one-on-one counseling. And Home SF, the website that we will post, lists all of the upcoming workshops for both rental and ownership programs. Okay, so it's a great resource. Again, I am with Balance, but there are 5 total agencies working in San Francisco in partnership with Home SF, and also in partnership with Mayor of Housing in San Francisco. So Balance, who are we? Like I said, we're a nonprofit counseling agency. We've been in San Francisco for over 30 years. We offer counseling services in person and also via phone. There's our contact information. You have our website and also our phone number. We list the services that we provide here. So home buying counseling. These are folks that maybe some of you are in this situation where you're considering home ownership. There will be steps to take if you decide to move forward with any programs in San Francisco. There's some classes and one-on-one counseling, and we provide both. Okay, we also provide support for folks that are already homeowners. So we call this post-purchase education. It's as important to be a knowledgeable homeowner as it is a home buyer. So for the folks here that decide to try to purchase, you're going to be going through pre-purchase education. Okay. But again, there's post-purchase education available as well. Really important topics. Estate planning, HOAs, maintenance, property tax, county assessor. These are really important topics. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have any financial difficulties, post home ownership or even before, you can contact us. There's rental counseling. We can help you with your financial picture. Take a look at your income, assets, debt, credit, okay? Kind of tell you where you stand, where you may need to be, or if you're ready to go, whether it's rental or ownership, okay? We also offer credit counseling. So if you need some assistance going through your credit, maybe making some improvements, we can guide you through that, okay? Debt management. So that gets involved with how much debt we have and balancing a budget, setting goals, and accomplishing those goals. So we'll coach you through that process. We're not just going to meet with you, tell you what you need to do and forget about you. We're always going to be here as a resource for you. So keep that in mind. Financial coaching. That's really what we're talking about. We want you to think about what your short and long-term goals are. And we'll reach those goals. Okay. And then we will be there as a resource for you. So we're here to discuss renting or buying, right? Now, your decision, my decision, and the next person's decision may all be different for all different reasons. Okay, so we're going to focus today on pros and cons. We're going to introduce you to some pros and cons that maybe you thought about, maybe you haven't. And then ultimately, you want to think about whether or not the pros outweigh the cons for you, okay, before you decide to go forward with the home buying process, okay? But you want to talk about, your obligations, future earnings. These are all the kind of things you want to think about, and maybe you don't know what to think about. And that's where a counselor with Balance and the other agencies can come in and give you feedback, where you stand, where you need to be, how long it may take. Okay, so if you think about your situation, kind of jot down some information, your short-term, long-term goals, your finances, and be ready to discuss that with the counselor so we can help guide you to get there. So, questions you want to ask yourself before we consider home ownership. Okay, first one's really important. How long do you plan to stay? So the obvious answer, majority of us want to find stable ownership opportunities, whether it's here in the Bay Area or somewhere else, but that's going to offer us stability, right? So you want to think about how long do we want to stay? If we want to stay a long time, it's seriously worth considering completing a purchase for many reasons that we'll discuss. If you think you want to purchase something and maybe move on in a year or two, then you have to outweigh the pros and cons with the cost of purchasing, whether it's moving costs, closing costs, all these things you have to take into account and compare to your current situation as a renter. How stable is your job, right? This is a key. Like when you meet with a lender, and Emma will touch on this, they look for stability with your employment, whether it's your job or your self-employment, if you're a business owner. The lender, and if you apply for any city programs, the city will also take a look at your employment situation. You've got to show stability, right? If you don't have stability, if you're
We lose you, Nick? We might have lost Nick here. Can everybody hear me? Can I see a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yes,
Excellent.
but we
I'll
lost
give-
Nick.
I'll just go ahead and kind of step in here. Thank you for the thumbs up. Let me let a couple of folks in. Okay, so my name is Shannon. I am the executive director of Home SF, and we work with Nick and the 5 housing counseling agencies that are HUD approved to provide this, home buyer education. And so if you don't mind, until Nick comes back to join us, I can kind of carry on with his portion of the presentation. I am certainly no substitute for Nick in the fact that I am not the one who would be sitting down with you, and I'm not a housing counselor. But I made the slides, and Nick will get back to us soon, I'm sure. So in terms of sort of where we're at with these questions, I mean, this is really about self-exploration and sort of thinking about, what are your plans for now, for the future, and really being clear on those things so that you can make an empowered decision, because all of these different questions are going to impact, whether you should buy a home or not, or whether you should buy a home right now, or maybe you might want to wait. And so, it's really about awareness. I think he had left off with how stable is your job? What are your plans after retirement? When will you retire? Can you see your household size changing? Are you anticipating that you might need to move a parent in with you? Or, are your children getting older that maybe they'll be moving out soon and you won't need as big a house? How are you going to get to the places that you need to go? And most importantly, I would say this last one is probably one of the most essential pieces here. And if you're not here yet, don't worry, but it is so important as a homeowner that you are organized and really good at maintaining and managing your budget, and that you are, spending the time to know what you're spending, where your money is going, and tracking every single cent. And we're going to talk about a lot of reasons as we kind of go through these slides, but don't worry if you're not good at managing your finances yet. Again, that's where Balance and the other housing counseling agencies are here to help you learn those practices. And then it's up to you to practice them. It's just like going to the gym. That's why I use the word practice. You don't make a budget and then like walk away and never look at it again. Your budget should be guiding your financial decisions. Your budget should be something that continues to evolve, and that you are, looking at, that you're keeping your records, that you know where things are at. Because as a homeowner, if you're not organized and you're trying to chase around papers, first of all, the process of buying a home is going to be incredibly painful and chaotic. And then also you might miss out on some of the benefits, like deductions and things that you might be able to get. If you can't find those receipts, guess what? The IRS is going to be like, guess you don't have any write-offs then. So, we really want to make sure that you're prepared. And that's part of the reason why we are putting classes like this out, to really make sure you understand what you would be considering and sort of what it might look like to get into homeownership. So in San Francisco, there's a variety of different types of rental housing. You'll see apartments that are just tiny little, 2 or 3 buildings. You'll see some that are mid-size, and then, some that are super huge with hundreds of apartments in the building. And then you'll also find single-family homes and condominiums that are owned and rented out. Oftentimes that's by a sort of what we call mom and pop landlord, or a smaller size landlord with those smaller units and single family homes and condos, but not always. You'll also find things like single room occupancy. A lot of people have housemates. It's pretty easy to find rooms for rent here. There's amazing programs like Home Match that can help you find awesome roommates that will match your lifestyle. Co-living, so living in like a housing cooperative, which can look like a lot of different things. It can be a individual unit where there's shared ownership, or it could also be like a big house that the rooms are rented out individually for different households. And then you'll also find below market rate, or what is called BMR rentals. And so those are units where the price of the rent is targeted for different income tiers for people who are, you know, at sort of more modest means, and maybe can't quite afford the market rate housing, but do have good jobs and obviously, you know, can support their rent in a building where the rent is reduced. And then there's also nonprofit housing that you might see through like Chinatown Community Development or Tenderloin Neighborhood Housing Development, or, you know, some of our housing authority properties, Mercy Housing, where, you know, those are nonprofit housing, typically is set aside for folks who are either very low income or sort of vulnerable communities such as seniors or veterans. And so there's a ton of different rental options out there. And the rent can, you know, we are very lucky that, well, it's not luck, it was a lot of hard work to get there, but we have rent control in San Francisco that doesn't cover every single building. So, you know, knowing whether your rental is subject to rent control or not is a very important thing. What you will see is that rent control is applicable to most of the units that are constructed before 1979, but there's exceptions for single family homes and condos. So if you are under rent control, then the amount of rent increase while you're living in the property is limited by that statute, by that law. And it's tracked according to the Consumer Price Index. So every year the city will publish, you know, this is the Consumer Price Index, and therefore this is the amount that rent is allowed to be raised within that year. And so when that rental increase is happening, you would sort of look here to the dates and see, you know, if your rent is being raised between March 1st, 2024 and February 28th of 2025, then they can raise your rent, the landlord can raise your rent up to 1.7% based on the CPI for that time period. And then for the you know, the period of March 1st, 2025, sort of the time of the year that we're in right now, that would be 1.4%. So, you know, the amount is allowed to go up, but it is subject to these restrictions. One of the biggest risks, obviously, of renting is that you can be evicted, even if it's no fault of your own. There's a lot of things that we see, like owner move-in evictions, or evictions which are allowable, you know, for certain conditions, even if you have lived there for many years. And I'm sure we have all heard about people who sadly, you know, have lived in their homes 20, 30, 40 years, even more sometimes, that find that, you know, they're unable to stay in their home. However, there are supports around that as well. So, you know, there's legal assistance. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you have been served eviction papers, or you think you're going to be evicted, that's really where some of our rental counselors can be helpful in understanding, you know, what to do in those situations. But, you know, it's sort of good that there's protections, but, you know, those protections don't ensure that you can absolutely live in the home forever and ever and ever. The other sort of risk, another risk that you'll hear commonly about renting, is that there's no gains and no equity. So how many of you in here have done things to fix up your property, like paint or whatever, because you're living in a place and you just want it to be nice and your landlord won't fix it? I have certainly done that. I'm sure a lot of you have as well. And so if you are just a tenant, unfortunately, the landlord is getting the benefit of those improvements that you make to the property, and that doesn't really come back to you. And, you know, sometimes when you're just trying to stay, especially if you have affordable rent and you just want to preserve it. I mean, I had one apartment personally where I replaced the carpet and spent like $2,000 out of my own pocket, just because it was so gross and I couldn't stand with the, but it made sense for me to do that rather than try to find another place to live, because I was in a great rent controlled building in a location that I loved being in. And so, I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm not promoting that as a strategy, but it happens a lot. We hear that from people all the time. And that's not that money goes to your landlord as far as both the equity of the sweat equity from your DIY repairs, but also, just overall from the investment, you're paying their mortgage. So you're basically paying off their investment as a tenant. And then, some landlords are lovely. I am not this person who's going to come up here and, talk smack about all landlords. There are certainly people who are in it for the right reasons. I've had some lovely landlords who provided a wonderful home where I was able to live for years and years. But it's kind of a crapshoot, and you don't know. And not all landlords are kind and compassionate. And certainly there's no economic incentive for them to have your best interest in mind in their asset. So, the rules ultimately will come down to what the landlord wants, as far as if you can paint your bathroom orange, if you're allowed to have pets, any of those types of things, that you might want to do. Even something like, can you barbecue, can you hang pictures on your wall? Those are all things that can be restricted by landlords in standard lease agreements. And then, there's also, different types of landlord relationships. So that, is kind of referencing, I've sort of been talking more about your mom and pop landlords or smaller landlords. A lot of landlords here in the city are property management companies. So they may not even be based in the city. You may be talking to somebody in like Georgia or Delaware, or, there may be some concerns about which laws apply, based upon what's going on. And so, you do have the variable of that landlord relationship. But as we mentioned, there's some good sides too. So it is the fastest way to get into housing. If you are unhoused or you're in a situation where you need to move like now, find a new place to live within the next 30 days, it is highly unlikely that you'll be able to buy a home in such a short time frame. The home buying process typically takes several months. It can take sometimes years, depending upon how ready you are. And so if you're looking at something where you need housing immediately, renting is a much faster way to get your foot in the door, and typically does have lower entry costs, because even though you may have a significant deposit that is required, you probably won't have, a down payment level of entry costs, and, in order to deal with that. So it does tend to be overall, the cheapest way to live, to be renting, at least in San Francisco. That's not true in every market, but that's kind of been the case here. There's a nice thing also about having your landlord be responsible for maintenance and for repairs, because things happen and maybe somebody throws a rock through the window, or maybe your fence falls down. If you're the homeowner, guess who's paying for that? That's you. And so when you're a renter, it can be really nice to be able to just call the landlord and say, I don't know what's going on. My stove is not working, or, this thing happened and my window's broken. And then that would be their responsibility as landlords, to repair that, and then also to be responsible for the ongoing maintenance. And then there's also reduced liability and costs associated with insurance. Renters insurance is way cheaper than homeowners insurance. It may only cost you a couple $100 a year to get, all of your belongings covered if you're a renter. Whereas, once the home becomes part of your asset portfolio and you have other liability associated with being a homeowner, you're going to be looking to pay thousands of dollars potentially, for insurance. The other nice benefit about renting is that mobility. So if you're just here, to finish school, if you're here for, a period of time where your plan is, ultimately to, to be able to move, within the next couple of years, or you want the freedom to be able to say, I want to bounce, I'm out of here, you can give 30 days notice and be done. By trying to deal with a home, you have to either rent it or sell it, and again, you've got several months of process that you're going to be dealing with. And then the last benefit of renting that a lot of folks see is some utilities are included in the rent. Things like garbage and water are very commonly a part of the lease and covered by whatever you're paying monthly for rent. And those utilities are things that a homeowner has to maintain on their own if they are a homeowner. And so be sure that you are aware of what is included in your lease and not, and make sure that you're taking that in consideration when you are looking at your options and when you're calculating the costs and sort of adding up, this is what it is to rent versus this is what it is to buy a home. So, make sure you're factoring in all of the, factors.
All right, well, I want to chime back in, and my apologies to everybody. This is Nick, I'm back, and Shannon, thank you for jumping in. I don't want to talk bad of any internet providers, but Xfinity just sent us a notice apologizing for the outage. So Shannon, don't go anywhere. We still have a little bit of potential instability here.
Okay, I can cover, don't worry. I can handle a little bit of instability.
Okay, I appreciate that. Anyway, again, Shannon, thank you. It's really important information. But yeah, let's talk about home ownership risks. Okay, as we put here, more financial responsibility. What does that really mean? Well, you've got a commitment. Okay, with rent, yes, you have a commitment. You could have a lease, but it's easier to get out of a rental situation than it is home ownership. Okay, so financial responsibility, long-term planning, right? We have to prepare for a mortgage. Was it a 30-year, 20-year, 10-year? For folks that are going to be purchasing townhomes or condominiums, you have an HOA that you're going to pay for, home association dues, regardless of whether or not you pay off the mortgage before. You're basically, as long as you live in the property, you're going to be paying taxes and insurance. Okay, and HOA. All right, so keep that in mind. Record keeping is important. Long-term planning, again, we talked about for folks that are considering retirement down the road, you want to know what your income sources are going to be for the long term to prepare, to know if you're bringing home enough, income and to pay a mortgage, not only a mortgage, but also your discretionary spending. That's why we get into budgeting, create your overall budget, not just housing, so you can prepare your plan for the long term. Higher upfront costs for home ownership. Yes, those days of 0% down are basically gone. So you'd have to save up some money for down payment and closing costs. Now, we're not going to give a detailed breakdown of what closing costs mean, but these are additional charges that every home buyer is responsible for. Okay, so it's not just your share of down payment, but there's costs to pay all the folks that are touching your file while you're in the process of buying. Okay. Generally, home ownership payments are higher than rent payments, so we have to prepare for that. With certain programs, though, in San Francisco that you may learn about, it's actually possible to pay less for home ownership than rent. So a counselor will explain that to you as well. Harder to relocate, we touched on that, right? It could take you several months to list a property, find a buyer, wait for them to be approved, and inspections and appraisals and all the process they have to go through that you had to go through when you were buying, right? So it's not an immediate process. Whereas if you're not in a current lease as a renter, you can give your 30-day notice and take off. Okay, so a little bit harder to liquidate and move on. Investment gains, losses depend on the market, right? So this is a big incentive for us to purchase a home. Okay, We want to gain equity, right? As renters, unfortunately, we don't have equity to gain. Like Shannon mentioned earlier, we're paying a mortgage for a landlord, and if they don't have a mortgage, well, we're just putting money in their pocket, right? So there are some tax benefits that a tax specialist will go over with you, the write-offs you will have as a homeowner that you don't have as a renter, okay? And the values of your home, you know, it can go up and down, right? These are the risks. So it seems to me the amount of time I've been kind of in and out of the San Francisco market, it's pretty safe investment here. Even during the hard times, typically the market maintains, typically, right? Not all the time, but you know, there's a lot of other markets where the economy goes down and so does the value of your home. Okay, so, and that affects the accessing your equity. You know, so these are the risks that you want to take into account. And again, going back to our initial statement, you want to outweigh the positives and the negatives. Okay. Time commitment of home ownership. So HOA management, again, home association dues. These are fees that you will pay if you own a townhouse or a condominium, and for some single family homes as well. Okay. You want to be involved in this with the association, attend the meetings, vote, do your research, consult with other homeowners. Okay. What a lot of homeowners do is don't want to take the time to attend these meetings. And so until they hear about potential assessment, increase in HOA fees every month, then everybody jumps in. Okay, so participate, make decisions, vote on all the topics. Okay, this affects you and your finances and the building that you've invested in. So long-term maintenance, can you dedicate time to regular property maintenance? So, you know, this is probably for 99% of us going to be our biggest purchase of our life, right? It's just like buying a car, whether it's a cheap car or expensive car, we want to maintain it. We want to make sure we have it for the long term. We want to put oil in our car so the engine doesn't bust. And guess what? It's more expensive to fix an engine to buy another car, right? So maintaining your property. And there are workshops specific to this where we talk about all of the things to consider to maintain your property, from your windows to the roof, to the piping in your house and plumbing, on and on and on. Again, we're not going to touch on that, but these are things to consider because, like Shannon said, we don't have a landlord to call anymore. So you want to maintain the property, make sure it stays in good condition. Financial management, will you keep good records and plan ahead for large expenses? So again, this comes back to budgeting, creating a budget. Some of you may already do that, but if you don't, we as counselors will educate you how to prepare a budget, maintain a budget, and accomplish your goals with that budget, and also make adjustments. Okay. Like we write here, do you have the discipline to save that 30K for that roof that may need replacing in 10 or 15 years? That's a maintenance item in your budget. So you want to set aside a certain amount of money that your budget allows to prepare for these type of items. All right, it is my pleasure to bring back Emma, who's here with us from BMO and has a lot of great information for us. So Emma, welcome back.
Thank you, Nick. I'm going to follow through the rest of the points regarding the home ownership, but from the lender perspective. Everybody know, as the introduction, my name is Emma Biggie. I'm from BMO, Bank of Montreal. Yes, homeownership has many benefits. Now let's, from the lender's perspective, let's look at it. What's the real benefit into it? First and foremost, equity. What is the equity? The equity is you own the piece of land and you have that value in your own pocket. This value not only to see you are going to buy the house, you own the house itself, you also can utilize the house to do other things. For example, higher education, open the employment and open the business, and also can do some other things you want to invest. So equity is very, very important. In this classroom, if everybody wants to become homeowner, there's a key questions also asked is, if you want to be a homeowner, do you really want to be just put a roof over the head? That question is seriously, we should ask ourselves. If we are going to put a roof over our head to become a homeowner, that's may not be the right way to do, because right now everybody live in the household, even you are renters. The renter actually rent a house, it's much easier to deal with the roof over the head. But why we want to become a homeowner, that homeownership come in a lot more. The other thing we're talking about, building up generational wealth. So everybody can take to homeownership, starting to build your own bank, start to building your investment portfolio. Definitely utilize the house, the equity, the value you put into the house, and take that out for something else. And this is a very, very important. Also, that's related to financial security and tax benefit. This is another good characteristic of become homeowner. We want to looking at it because pretty much everything we do the house, we can write it off in your personal taxes. So that will basically upfront looks like we spend a lot of money. For example, with fixing houses, we buy things to improve the houses, but in the end, we actually can write those expenses off, and that's actually is a saving us money in the back. So beyond that, homeownership also have the control of the environment. We own the house, we know who we are, what we are, and who are the people around us, and what type of a community we belong to. So we can build that. And then homeownership requirement. This is a very interesting for the especially from a lender's perspective. If you want to get into the homeownership, you do need to consider upfront cost and ongoing cost. What is upfront cost? Normally we talk about transaction cost. When you purchase the house, you do need to consider you have to have a down payment, which is your personal investment to purchase the house. That's the money out of your own pocket, or get some down payment assistance program. In our San Francisco space, we talk about the San Francisco debt program. That's a very large down payment system program. Also, you are thinking about a closing cost, because we have to save up enough money to purchase the house. Even a lot of people say, well, I think I don't need to spend anything to purchase the house. But somewhat you do need to save up to that. It's not a cost for you, but still that cost is there. So somewhat we do need to prepare for that, and especially prepare the property tax and the insurance. That's all come out somewhere. So that let's facing that reality, we have to have some certain reserves, the reserve for pay the cost, and also reserve for them loan programs requirement. Ongoing cost, the both Shannon and Nick mentioned a lot, repairs, the house repairs, and constantly dealing with taxes and the insurance. Some of those insurance is not just a regular homeowner's insurance for the hazard for the fire. If you are purchasing the flood zone area in the famous flood zone area, you actually obligated to purchase flood insurance. And folks in San Francisco think in recent years the earthquake is a consideration. That's something you want to protect your asset. Cannot afford to losing it, you probably buy those insurance. That's a cost. And once that cost is installed in the life in the household, that's going to keep going. It's not one day we get that and then the other day we cannot. And just remember, all these costs are related to the house. If we do have the house, we have that cost. If we don't have the house, like today, we rent it, there's no this type of a house cost. So that's something you really need to put some seriously consideration. Also constantly updating the houses. Upfront cost, the down payment, the closing cost, those type of thing we talked a lot. The down payment is, like I said, is upfront personal investment. Normally, how much is that? A lot of people ask, do I have enough money for the down payment cost part? From current, all the loan program, either is a private section or government section, there's a range talking about the down payment is basically from 3% up to 20%. If it's 3%, that's the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, regular conforming loans. And then your government loan, you may put down 3.5% down payment and then go up to the 20%. Why is 20%? 20% is a threshold for the lender to consider the home buyer has enough personal investment so they don't feel too much risky to lend a large loan amount. Because if a less 20%, you are facing mortgage insurance. And that mortgage insurance concept is going to ensure the lender to lend large sum of money. That's why 20% is a threshold. If lender thinking they lend over 80%, in other words, as a buyer has a homeowners but have less than 20%, the lender does require the homeowner private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance. So with that type of insurance, that's just add another layer of the cost for the household. Definitely people need to think about it. Good part about that is nowadays the down payment piece has a lot of help, has a lot of assistance. So homeowner don't need to come up with all those money out of your own pocket. You can collect all the other help and assistance to do the down payment. So that's make life much easier and also can help to lower your household the household cost or household expenses. Closing cost and other fees. For this, to be honest, in regular life, everything has a cost. There's no such a thing is totally free. So everything has a cost. But in the home ownership transaction, what I would suggest everybody is we need to be mindful and need to be aware. Cost is always there because tied to human labor, tied to the service. But who is paying that cost? And that can be negotiated. And also there are other help to supplement that cost. For example, you can get a government grant, lender's grant, and all those type of things. Closing cost grant or closing cost program can help to minimize that cost. So this is the part, just my suggestion or advice in this piece is if you do consider to go home ownership, you actually can get a lot of resources. So don't be afraid. Employment verification income. Okay, this is the good part is we need to caution our future homeowners. So at the beginning part, Nick actually mentioned something about employment and then verifiable income. Why lender wants to do this? Because the buyers, the income, the employment is the source for the loan repayment. In other words, is a lender be more concerned whether the lended out the money be paid back in the future. That's why employment and verifiable income become the key, because anybody walk in the financial institution, ask for a loan from a lender's perspective, lender doesn't know our public. We don't know a lot about what our behavior about the money, what's our income history and current and projected in the future. Also, employment, the lender doesn't know what we do as a public and how we do those things to sustain our homeownership. So that's why the lender definitely need to verify all this information. So from homeownership side, my suggestion is we need to gather all the information they need to see, to understand us, to know us. So current income, asset, employment status, credit history, and all the other ability to pay the future mortgages and all the other obligations. There's one thing I do consider to point it out. This is a very, very important is on this slide, there's a monthly debt to income ratio. We call the DTI ratio. Just to give everybody kind of a glimpse of this piece. This is the ratio. That's the only facts. That's the only facts for the lender to qualify people to make a decision on the buyer's affordability. So if anybody comes in to say, hey, Emma, I want to borrow money and I don't know how much I can afford, how much I can borrow, guess what? This ratio will, the formula, the lender will tell us or do the calculation for us to see how much we can afford, how much we can borrow. So that's the key thing for that. And then for the credit piece, I want to give another piece, not on this set of credit history. Why credit is very important. Nick mentioned is the landlord will maintain the good credit, everything. Why credit is good? Because credit is going to be the key facts to decide the price of the money. Here we go. So what is the good credit? Well, in reality, good credit, bad credit, there's some range indicate just a kind of as a yardstick to measure high and low. But in reality, credit being judged or be decided by different model for the financial institution to measure people's behavior. Some lender also has a different program and services to pick it up the credit at different levels. So here is a thing for the slides. We say, hey, we have the okay credit. We normally also has another word talking about this is a fair credit. So 620 to 679 is in the public generally consider as a fair, okay credit. And then the good credit is one notch up, and the extra credit is go to 720 to 850. So in each section, so there's a lot of things can happen. So for our consumer, for our renters, start thinking to get into the homeownership, the first thing we need to know where we stand in the credit, how much debt do we have, and how strong we are to handle those liability, and how confident we are to manage the money to meet the high credit requirement. Mortgage is probably the biggest household debt liability. So to really, in consideration, pay off the debt or keep paying the mortgages a couple of $1,000s per month, that's really needed our discipline, our understanding about homeownership, and also understanding as the consumer to fulfill the obligation to pay off the debt. So there's a lot of things there. Definitely we will, through this homeownership journey, we definitely help our consumers and public understand the concept, the definition, the meaningful piece about homeownership. This is also part of that. Like I said, good credit is the decision facts for price of the money. In other words, good credit, you will get a cheaper rate, and a lower or not so good or fair credit will you pay more for getting into the money market. Yes. Mortgage payment. This is the one famous line for all the home ownership. This is for the whole home lending industry. Regardless, lender is using this as a measurement. Home buyer is also using this to gauge the household affordability. This is a standard formula here. Principal, interest, tax, insurance. This is we call the PITI. This is a standard we're talking about a mortgage payment, mortgage liability. Sometimes like current previous, Shannon mentioned is HOA. So HOA cost can be incorporated into this formula on monthly basis. So what we really see about this, first we want to everybody pay attention to this is your monthly payment. This is your monthly obligation. When you are doing the mortgage negotiation with the lenders, a lot of people focus on the interest rate. The interest rate can be high and low, but in reality, in day out life, what are we really facing? We don't pay the interest, we pay the mortgage payment, which is right here. So that's why we want to everybody understand the concept and really know how this concept worked in the household. Also, the second piece we want to mention is PITI mortgage payment. A lot of time you dealing with a lender, if you have a less down payment or the special program, the lender actually ask the buyer, a homeowner, to establish, we call the escrow account or impound account to collect all the money at once. And this can cause a burden for the home buyers because in reality, we probably have enough money for pay principal and interest only piece, the first two items there, because that's a really mortgage payment, not the tax and the insurance. But if the lender requires to lump sum them together, that can be a big payment in a household on monthly basis. So that's something is really for us, for homeowners to think about it, how to manage money. So definitely this is something to think about it when you are negotiate or discuss the loan options with your lender. Should I buy a home? This is the question actually I would say in everybody else's mind. Is not the us specialist or professional here to answer that question for you. When you are ready, you know you want to do it. This is the home ownership, but we can illustrate what's the reason behind it. We gave all this rent to versus own, all those good and not so good pros and cons, whatever way we put it, all these theories, all this reasoning behind it is just to help understand to say, is that a renting is better and fit for my lifestyle? To be honest, for over 20 years in the home lending space, in the lending business, I can tell everybody home ownership is not for everybody. And I know my specialist team here, Shannon and Nick, even we're from a different perspective. Shannon from the nonprofit perspective, as Nick is counselor perspective. We all know that is not one thing fit for everybody. But the major thing is if we really understand that, we can work on that to really find the niche for ourselves. Maybe renting is my choice and homeownership may be the other person's best choice. So that's something I leave it for everybody. And I think this is my piece to end it right here about home ownership and renting. Definitely each side has their own unique characteristic and contribution to public life. So definitely I wish everybody take time to think through and also coming back to get education with all of us here. And really we're here to help you to really sail through this journey about homeownership or about home finances, about money value education. Thank you very much. Back to Nick.
Are you with us, Nick? feel like I'm holding
I
a
think Nick,
seance.
Nick's dropped out again.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess he's having some troubles there, but yeah, so the moral of the story is it's really up to you, and it depends. Everything depends on your lifestyle, your goals, your financial situation. But what I always used to tell people when I was a housing counselor, and even before that when I was a realtor, is if you're still confused, or if you're still like, I don't know, I'm unsure, I'm on the fence, that means you need more information, right? And so there's a lot of places to get that information for no obligation, all for free. You can find out about, if you go to our website, homesanfrancisco.org. As Nick mentioned earlier, we've got all 5 of the housing counseling agencies in San Francisco. We have their workshops all listed on a common calendar. There's a first-time homebuyer workshop that goes over the nuts and bolts of what does it mean to buy a house, that kind of dives a little deeper in some of the things we touched on really lightly today. There's a program orientation, which talks about all the different, homebuyer assistance programs, such as down payment assistance, like Emma was talking about, as well as below market rate home ownership opportunities. And so you can come to a class. You can reach out to us and ask us questions, or ask for an appointment with the housing counselor. So if you call 415-202-5464, this is a total typo, 5464, or info at Home San Francisco, which is indeed the correct email, that is a way to reach us. And so we are happy to help make sure that you get connected to the resources and services that can help to support you. And then we also have a really amazing event that is coming up June 21st. That's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully a lot of you will come and participate. So Saturday, June 21st from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the University of San Francisco, McLaren Hall, which is at 2130 Fulton Street, a few blocks past the Visadero. There will be a main resource fair with over 60 tables from all sorts of different housing assistance programs, homebuyer education, rental education. There'll be some of the other rental options that we talked about, such as our nonprofit housing. You can find out about those things, housing for seniors, some of the things that are coming up there. And then also, in addition to all sorts of great information at the tables, there's also a help center. So you can actually sit down with someone one-on-one. It's across the way. You kind of go across the courtyard, so it's not like in the main area where all the hubbub and happenings will be going on. You can sit down one-on-one with a legal aid person or a housing counselor such as Nick, and really talk about, what is going on in your own situation. What are the things that you have that are strengths to your situation that can help you get a stable housing? What are your goals? What do you hope to achieve? And address any sort of emergencies that are going on. This could be, for folks who are already homeowners, maybe they've fallen behind in their payments or their taxes, and they, need help to get, reinstated in a good financial position. Potentially, if you have are in the process of being evicted, or if you've received, notices from your landlord, we'll have some really amazing legal aid people there. We'll have folks that are talking about, the services that are available for families and individuals who are currently unhoused, and or who are in imminent need of emergency housing to avoid homelessness. There will be so many amazing, great things to learn and information to be gathered. You'll get to meet all of us in person. All of the presenters here today will be at that event. And then we'll also have lunch and goodies, and it's just a really amazing opportunity. So We hope to see many of you there. I know that, you know, I want to be kind of conscientious about the time because it's 7:34, but I do want to say two things before you go. Number one, we will stay to answer questions. You know, we promised Q&A. We don't have to run off. I'm just kind of wrapping up for your benefit because again, you know, we try to honor the commitments of, you know, this workshop being from 6:30 to 7:30. But also before you go, I do want to ask that you please give us some feedback on this workshop. Was this helpful for you? Was there anything that you learned here today? Is there anything that we can do better? You know, we consider ourselves to be in an ongoing conversation with you, you know, with the community to really understand, you know, what you need, what's helpful, and to always be improving our programs and services. So, two ways that you can get to this evaluation link. One, there's the QR code, this like weird funky shape in the middle of your computer screen right now. If you are able to snap that with your cell phone, it will take you automatically to the survey, to the evaluation. If not, you can see this link right here, this forms.office link. I'm going to go ahead and also put this in the chat. Oops, let me put it back so you guys can see it, but I'll put that in the chat as well so that you guys are able to go in and give us that feedback. So all of that being said, again, we're happy to hang out, and I'm going to start by checking out the technical question. Okay, so before I do the technical questions, let me just make sure there's nothing above here. Great. Okay, so the workshop, Affordable Housing Workshop Online, May 27th.
So I already answered on Natalia.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That,
Got it.
you know,
So,
status like.
to Hector's question, is there a workshop specifically for renters? So there's a lot of workshops specifically for renters. If you go to the housing website that we had put up here, homesanfrancisco.org, up at the top navigation bar, you'll see, you know, home buyer, I'm a current homeowner, I'm a renter. There's all sorts of rental workshops that you can sign up to attend. There's also different subsidies that may be available. And so you can find out about those types of things, you know, emergency rental assistance and other, you know, HIV, housing vouchers, etc. They talk about those in the rental workshops as well. And again, you can also come to the Housing Expo and get a lot of information there for renters as well. And the parking at the housing fair, there is a parking lot there. I think we have about 400 to 600 parking spaces available. So, you know, we are encouraging people to take public transit. You know, USF is pretty transit friendly. But if you are driving, there's parking lots on both sides of the venue, you know, where you'll see the signs, and you know, you can go ahead and park in the lot, which will be at no cost as part of the housing fair. There's also a below market rate rental workshop, which it looks like Alex already put that on there. So, you know, you can go to the summerofhousing.org and look at that. But that, I can tell you right now, is from 6:30 to 7:30 on June 12th. So that will be specifically talking about the rentals where they're for certain income levels, and the price of those rentals is reduced, you know, for folks who qualify. If you want to make an appointment to meet with a housing counselor, we're happy to help you do that. So you can reach out to us, info@homesanfrancisco.org. And, we'll follow up with some basic questions to make sure that we're sending you to the right spot, because there's counseling available in a whole variety of languages. We have Spanish, Filipino, Cantonese, Mandarin, Russian. There's a lot of different options that are available. And then also, there's for rental housing, the programs do sometimes get sort of categorized by, sort of rentals for individuals, and then separate from that, for families and children who, or for households that have children under 18. And so, we want to make sure that we're connecting you to the right organization. So that's kind of what we do. And we'll, connect with you. And then when we make that referral, it's not just like, oh, go call these people. We can help make sure that you get that appointment, make sure that you're connected to, the service provider, and not necessarily, having to just like call randomly, to an organization, to their main, front desk line kind of thing. So, I will slow down again, but I want to, I do talk really fast, so I apologize for anyone who I spoke too fast for. We are still available for questions, and so at this time, if you have a question that was not answered, I would invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. Anybody have any questions? You can still put them in the chat if you're shy. We're still monitoring the chat, but you can also unmute yourself and ask if you want to. So this is just, again, the very tip of the iceberg. This is just a little bit of information to kind of help you make a pro and cons list. I definitely hope that we'll see a lot of you at the resource fair. If you have other follow-up questions, you can reach out to us directly. And the last thing I'll say is that for those of you who have your email address that you put in when you registered, we will send out the slides to that email. So that way you can, have all of this for your records, and kind of, if you want to reference something later or go back, and say, who was that person again? What was it that they said? How much was the down payment that they want from me? You can kind of refer to the slides. So be looking for those to be emailed out within the next couple of days. And yeah, go to the summerofhousing.org and look at some of the other workshops that are coming on. So maybe we'll see some of you at the BMR rental workshop. We have a great workshop for folks that are seniors that's going to be talking a lot about rental housing, because there's some new senior rental projects that are coming up. There's a lot of great classes and a lot of great information, and we're just trying to get it out there and make it free to the public, so that you all can, make these decisions for yourself and figure out. The age to be eligible for senior housing depends on the project and where their funding comes from. And so you will see buildings that are 55 and over, and then sometimes they require 60 and over. So that depends on the program and the developed, like the way that the building was funded when the nonprofit developer built it. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, I'm Shannon. Thank you so much to Nick, who is no longer with us, but he'll be at the housing fair. Thanks to Emma for, sharing with us the valuable lender information and bringing that bank perspective. And thanks to Alex, who's my amazing team member and the best ever program director, for helping us to put this together. Everyone have a great night.